Bob Cusack with The Hill and with Mark Penn, extraordinary holster. Mark, as we always do, this month's polling, if you have to summarize it in one word, what's the word?
Unhappy.
And why is
That's the
that?
key word. Well, because these voters are unhappy with the economy, unhappy with the direction of the country, unhappy with the political choices, unhappy with Congress. About half think their economic situation is deteriorating. Most people don't like the Republicans. Most people don't like the Democrats. Most people don't like Trump. Most people don't like Biden. This is an unhappy electorate, and unhappy electorates are volatile electorates.
And that's a problem for the incumbent Joe Biden. His approval rating, again, is stuck at 43. According to your data, we have seen some good economic numbers on the unemployment rate and the stock market and inflation, though the Federal Reserve has made clear that they're still going to watch inflation and maybe raise rates again later this year. But still, even though you've had some good indicators, 2 and 3 perceive the economy as weak, according to your data, and most, basically 2 out of 3, don't approve of this economy. Those numbers have to turn around, I would think, for Biden to get reelected. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I think Biden's got to show some better numbers by the end of the summer, or he may have some additional primary challengers. Uh, I think that the current situation here at a 43% job approval, I'm actually a little surprised because look, he got the debt ceiling deal done. The job numbers were good. The inflation is down. The stock market has come back. And I think people's attitude towards Biden, that he's too old, he's not really competent, they seem to be frozen in place, and he doesn't seem to be able to kind of change attitudes much. Even though I thought he had a much better month, absent a fall or two at an
Yes.
inopportune moment.
Well, and on the other side, we've seen now 2 indictments of former President Donald Trump, and it doesn't matter. It's like, what indictment? His numbers are still very solid among his base. He's still up on Joe Biden by 6 points, 45 to 39. He's still trouncing DeSantis. So, what were your takeaways from that data after another indictment of Trump?
Look, I thought that if you'd gone back 6 months, we would have thought that Trump would have been below 50 with the Republican vote. Ron DeSantis probably in the 30s, clearly showing some momentum. Republicans looking to kind of make a switch. They're just not seeing it as of now. As of now, the base is dug in. The Allen Bragg indictment really is what galvanized them. This second one didn't inflame them anymore, but it didn't turn them off yet, even though a lot more people think that he may have done something wrong here. Still, it's Trump against the deep state, and we are recording record low ratings for the Justice Department.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that's definitely a factor. I mean, but he is still trouncing DeSantis. Now, DeSantis, your data show, is the clear second choice after Trump. But however, Vivek Ramaswamy is 8 points above. Most people are below water, meaning they have more disapproval than approval. But Vivek is above water. Actually, Haley and Scott are above, but they're not catching on. Is that just because maybe the public is not paying attention, or is that just Trump having just a grip on the party that's going to be not impossible, but tough to shake?
Well, it's a little early for primary opponents to catch on, particularly against a presidential incumbent, right? And Trump, after all, even though he lost, he's a president who could serve a second term. That's a pretty daunting thing for a party to turn out in the primaries. And I think you've got some lesser known candidates here who, they just got in the race. Although Vivek has come from nothing and has been, if anyone is showing any momentum whatsoever in the Republican primary now, it's actually him, right? And he's just kind of a straight shooter. He's always got an interesting policy take on things. He's definitely a different kind of candidate compared to the rest that are just saying, "Look, I can win." Like I think the worst argument I hear from the Trump opponents is, "I can win and Trump can't," because that doesn't inspire leadership, right? That this you got to show that you can, and if you show that you can, then they will conclude that you can win. But if you just go out and keep saying you're going to win, they're going to stick with Trump.
And that's another kind of startling finding, I thought, was RFK Jr. being 21 points above water. Now, Biden's still beating him handily. You have it 62-15. But what do you make of that?
America likes the Kennedys still. At least us older generations who remember the Kennedys. How could you not like somebody named Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Uh, so even if he's a little wackier than most Kennedys, still, I do think that people are getting to know him, that he's making a good impression. He's not coming off as a slash and burn, political figure. He's coming off as a somewhat kind of independent figure. I don't think he's got, I think he's in many ways a kind of a surrogate just for a Biden opponent. But personally, he's doing himself good rather than harm, in the way he's approaching the primary.
And it's when you're going back to the Trump indictment, these are serious charges, obviously federal charges that could put him in jail for life. It's hard to see Donald Trump in jail, and certainly the public also kind of concurs with that. 57% think Trump will be acquitted, and then even if he's not acquitted, he could be pardoned. Where are we going with this? And what do you think the perception is just from swing voters, let's say? Because we know where Republicans and Democrats are on this.
Well, Merrick Garland doesn't seem to be letting up in the least. He has thought nothing of breaking attorney-client privilege, nothing of taking, people like Navarro and Peter Navarro and others in chains, over congressional subpoenas. He obviously appointed a pit bull special counsel against Trump who has a history of being reversed for being too aggressive on public corruption cases. So I think Merrick Garland fully intends to put Donald Trump behind bars, right? And whether or not there'll be presidential intervention by someone else, or whether or not we'll have a president serving from bars, I don't really know. But I don't see any compromise yet on Garland's part on any of these issues whatsoever. And that's why the Justice Department rating keeps falling. And he's really undermining the institution of the Justice Department by doing what he's doing in the way he's doing it.
You also asked some questions of people on abortion, transgender issues. First on abortion, obviously that really helped Democrats as an issue in the midterm election. What were your takeaways on abortion, and then transgender, which is a big issue, but it's obviously not as important to people as like the economy.
Yeah, no. What we tried to do is take some of the things that more left-leaning states have been adopting and some of the things that more right-leaning states have been adopting. And what you see is that a lot of the positions, including no puberty blockers or surgery for minors in transgender, right, are popular. Things like 6-week abortion bills are not popular. But when you kind of add them up, you can see that people are trending population-wise towards packing up and heading to the Republican states. And interestingly, some of the well-known Democratic positions here, more dominated by the left wing of the party, those split the Democratic Party. They are moving some of these states like Illinois and New York and California farther to the left than really the Democratic constituency itself wants. And I think that's one of the reasons you see this kind of voting with your feet here as the country moves itself around and the electoral college gets changed and the makeup of Congress gets changed as well. So I think there is a warning here for how does the Democratic Party get back to the center because some of its positions could easily be modified. Instead of abortion through 9 months, abortion through 15 or 26 weeks would get a clear, overwhelming majority of both the voters and Democrats. And I think some of the positions on immigration, don't have the kind of support that I think the activist leadership thinks they do.
Uh-huh. I did want to ask you one question about bike lanes. You asked a question, and amazingly, we have a bipartisan issue. Can you explain it?
Well, people are divided on almost every issue, and there's a pretty divided on electric cars, but there's one thing that people agree upon. They don't use them much, but they agree that they should be there, and that is bike lanes. Overwhelming majorities of all three parties are in favor of the existing or more bike lanes. So I thought that this would be rip them up and pull them out, and it was the opposite.
How much of polling do you think is, and just going back to Vivek Ramaswamy, who's doing a lot of media? I don't see Ron DeSantis doing a lot of media. He's launched his presidential campaign. It wasn't a great launch. He had technical problems on Twitter. The numbers still reflected Trump up 45 points, 59-14 among GOP voters. Vivek seems to make news. He has ideas. He says everyone should pardon Trump, who's running in the Republican race. And yeah, I think Nikki Haley is pretty good at that. But how important is that? Because as you said earlier, it's early in the race, and people don't know these. They're not focusing on it. But it's up to the candidates to grab their attention. And who do you think is doing a good job at that?
Well, it's a little tricky at this point, because usually at this point you would be looking at the money primary. So you'd be saying who can get the money that they need to sustain a campaign. It does look like that everybody can get the money that they need, that money is no longer as big a problem, as it used to be. So you'd be looking at who's building a better organization, who's got more money, right? And then usually Vivek wouldn't really make much of a dent on the national scene. The idea would be to win or do really well in Iowa or New Hampshire, and so a lot of the work now is generally under the surface in those states, and doesn't reflect itself nationally. So his strategy is a little bit different. Like, get some national publicity, have some ideas out there, get some lots of support from the Wall Street Journal editorial page, and raise your visibility, because nobody would otherwise knew who he was. And that seems to be going pretty well. But does he have the money? Does he have the organization? And can he play in one of the early states? If he can't, at the end of the day, it will be more of a vanity campaign.
You also have a finding of 69% of independents and others don't want Biden to run. Now, obviously, Biden did well with independents in 2020. He lost him in 2021, and then that's part of the reason Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia, who has also been mentioned as a presidential candidate, but is probably not going to get in. But going back to the word you picked, unhappy. Okay, so the electorate is volatile. They're unhappy. They're angry. But yet Trump and Biden are solidifying their spots and are the clear front runners to win the nomination. Why is that?
Because if you look at it, we're something like a 40-40-20 country, or maybe a 35-35-30 country, that, there's these pretty solid bases, particularly among those who vote in primaries, as opposed to maybe the broader, party electorates. And they really tend to get their own facts, their own view of the facts, and they tend to put party over country. And consequently, I think they both dug in on their leaders, right, or who they view as their leaders, no matter what they do, no matter what they say on any given day. And I do think there's still political mobility out there. I do think there's a lot of voters who can be persuaded and can move even within these primaries. But as you look at it today, those bases within the bases are pretty solid. And that's what is, absent, and again, it's always hard because the primaries haven't been run. And if you kind of look at it, if Trump were at 65, I would say he has a lock. I've never seen anyone at 65 lose going into the primary season. If he was at 35, I'd say he's a stone cold loser. Where he is, he's closer to winning than losing. So I got to give him the odds on favorite. And now Biden's moved up to like 62. So got to give him they're both of the odds on favorite, but they're not, they're not 100% solid. Both of them, have to see how these indictments and court rulings begin to play themselves out, and stuff that gets revealed, and the Bidens have a bunch of information coming down the pike as well, right? That could be incredibly disruptive, and the Republicans seem to know what they're doing in this investigation. They kind of seem to know where things are, so they have some really actually good whistleblower sources now that I think they never had before.
And going back to what you said earlier, maybe it's not make or break, but why is this summer so important for the president to get his numbers up?
Well, if the president doesn't get his numbers up by September, I think you've got at least 3 governors who are sitting there. Newsom's already going out and trying to raise his national profile. You've got governors of Illinois and Michigan, and I think the 3 of them would make pretty credible Democratic presidential candidates. And I think that one or more of them will get in if he doesn't raise his numbers. And if the fear of him losing really intensifies, and there's a lot of fear out there because, after all, the Democratic electorate is weakly behind Biden.
There definitely is some fear out there on the Democratic side. Last question. Anything I miss? Any closing remarks?
No, I mean, I think that public opinion and the divisions of the country remain, I think as they have been, very little change in those. America's looking for leadership. We still have a tremendous number of people, unhappy with these choices. And at the same time, I do think issues do matter to people. The people are moving, I think, on the basis of, taxes and environment and comfortable issues, that the idea that the country is a single country with a single set of laws, which is where we had been moving to for maybe 30 or 40 years, we're now moving to a more kind of, states' rights country with different legislative and lifestyle environments within different states. And so I think we're moving backward from the kind of homogeneity we thought we were moving towards. So I think that's a kind of fascinating development as we see how the states put in different laws on many of these important social issues.
Oh, definitely. It'll be an interesting summer, and we'll be back next month. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.